the channel here. Aiden, are you there? Oh, you're muted. Can you see me?
Hey man, what's up? Yeah, I can see you.
Hey, what's going on, man?
Not much. How about you?
Doing all right. Doing all right. Thanks for agreeing to chat with me today. Appreciate it.
Hey man, anytime.
So you had some scheduled things go on. How was your swim meet?
Um, so there was some miscommunications with that, so it's actually on this Thursday. So
Oh, nice,
I'm really looking forward to it.
nice. You said you coach too, right?
Yeah, I'm a volunteer coach um for our local swim team, and our I'm also a volunteer coach for the local cross country team.
Oh, nice. That's awesome, man.
Thanks. Yeah.
Very cool. Very cool. Well, nice. Well, if you don't mind, maybe introduce yourself to chat here. And for we'll clip this out too. We'll put it on YouTube.
Oh, nice. Yeah, so my name is Aiden, most commonly known as Political Talks on Twitch and YouTube and Discord. Um, and I just graduated um high school, and I'm excited to have this conversation. I still forming my political beliefs, so
Sure.
I'm open to other sides. So that's yeah, so that's what I got.
Yeah, that's awesome, man. Yeah, I really appreciate you like having the like because full disclosure. I mean, we've discussed a couple. I don't know if we've really discussed anything, but we've shared a couple of views before, and we pretty much disagree on a lot of things. So I appreciate you being willing to have the conversation, even though we're kind of starting off knowing we disagree.
Yeah, man. I'm all about having a good discussion. I believe the world will be a better place if people can sit down, have a civil discussion, even if they disagree.
Oh, that's not gonna work. Oh, sorry, I'm messing around. I should not be messing around with my windows right now.
And it is fine.
Where'd you go? There you are. Okay. All right, we're back.
Hello.
All right, man. So let's. Do you want to jump into this discussion then?
It's completely up to you, man. You have me for the majority of the night, so.
Oh, right on. Yeah. So for those of you who don't know Aiden's content, and I was just introduced, and I saw a video on that you did on abortion. And
Yeah, my hot take.
your hot take on abortion. Um,
Mhm.
and I watched the video. Really, really good job. I know this is somewhat new to you too, right?
Yeah, if you couldn't tell, it's my first time doing a video with a script. I kept looking down to like my sheet of paper
Oh,
I
really?
had in front of me, like what did I have set up next? No.
Yeah, it's really difficult to do like produced video, right? Like I actually haven't done that yet. Like I've tried to clip out a few of my segments here, but it's way different, when you're not interacting with somebody.
Oh yeah, it is. Like I really wished I had someone there to do the video with, just so would flow easier.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. But so nice job, first time out. Um
Yeah.
But that said, a lot of the content is what I disagreed with. So I wanted to chat with you about it and just get your, kind of get your perspective. So,
Yeah.
maybe if you don't mind, maybe I can just like steelman your video real quick, and then you can jump in right after me and uh, clarify anything that I maybe have wrong, or really just expand on your points. Give us an idea of where you're coming from as well.
Yeah, man. Of course.
Cool. So, as to kind of summarize and steelman your video, I
Mhm.
your stance is that the existence of life is the determining factor when it comes to the pro-abortion versus anti-abortion debate, right? Um,
Correct.
and just so actually before I jump and go any further, do you want to discuss more like the policy or the morality end of it? Like how like
Um,
where's your focus typically?
so my focus, I typically try to do it both sides when I have a discussion with someone, because this is the first time I've had a discussion about abortion. Um, I've debated it several times on my channel, and usually it seems the conversation goes into the morality of it,
Hmm.
but I have gone over the policy side of it as well.
Okay. Yeah, I think we'll. I mean, I think the honestly, if we talk about policy, we're going to end up talking about morality. I mean, the
Yeah.
policy is kind of based on morality. So, um,
Mhm.
I just kind of wanted to see your focus, I guess, between the two.
Okay.
Um, but at any rate, so like I said, so you're the existence of life, basically the ascribing life. Is the determining factor when it comes to the pro-abortion versus anti-abortion debate. Life can be ascribed to a fetus based on several biological factors that you laid out in your video,
Yes.
and you can expand better than I can on that part. So,
Mhm.
um, is that like a fair like quick summary of your point and
Yeah.
let me know where I went wrong and expand on that if you would.
That is actually a really good summary, actually, of it. Um, so someone in my last stream did point out that a study was released. Haven't looked thoroughly into it yet, but this study said that the ova, the egg, fits those same exact characteristics, I guess, categories that I listed in my video as well.
Mm-hmm.
So that may change my stance a little bit, but we'll see. I still have to look into that.
Okay. And what were some of those, like, if you can clarify too, what were the those specific biological factors that make up
Mhm.
the life, right? Is what we're talking about.
Yeah, so scientifically, it's been consistently organism has to carry out homeostasis, be composed of one or more cells, be able to carry out metabolism, which is both metabolism and anabolism. Never heard of those parts of metabolism until I researched this.
Mm.
So if you know more than I do in that, uh, go right ahead and let me
Not
know.
really. No, I'm no
All right.
biologist.
Yeah, I mean, dude, I almost failed biology class my freshman year. So like, when I got the opportunity to get out of that class, man, I took it. I took it and ran. Um, yeah. The other categories are able to carry out growth, able to adapt to their environment and respond to stimuli, and also perform reproduction. The site source I used for that was the Socratic. Um, those are the categories.
Okay. All right. So here's well, let me. So obviously, I don't know if it's obvious, but I'm kind of for the affirmative. I'm the pro anti-abortion or the pro anti-abortion, the pro-abortion stance.
Oxymoron.
Yeah, that
Yeah.
didn't work so well. The pro-abortion stance.
Mhm.
And so I guess I'll kind of give my affirmative argument. You know,
All right.
to me, the debate kind of stems around whether we attribute human rights to embryos and fetuses in the womb, depending on the point in development.
Mhm.
And I think it does also stem around the point of development that we ascribe those rights. Um, so I actually would rather argue instead of life being the determining factor, really personhood is the determining factor. And when we ascribe personhood to the entity, right?
Mhm.
So until a fetus develops basically to a point where the point of personhood, we should not value the rights of the fetus over the rights of the existing person that has held and currently holds human rights, right? We should grant moral consideration to the existing subjective experience rather than the future subjective experience. We can't grant moral consideration to something that doesn't yet exist. So the question becomes, when do we ascribe personhood? Right, and I'd like to focus on that a little bit. Life. I think it's inarguable that life begins when at conception. I guess, right. That would be, I think, where life begins. Right, the
Okay.
development of life, but
The
not
yeah the
personhood.
development, yeah. Because now that someone brought to my attention the egg eats the characterization of life, I'd want to say fertilization, but since I haven't looked into that yet, for the sake of argument, we can go with conception.
Yeah, yeah, and so I can kind of agree with that. Like, I think the development of life begins at conception, fertilization, but really whatever, wherever you want to put that. But
Mhm.
life isn't the most important factor when we're talking about abortion, in my opinion. I think it's personhood. Now,
So
go ahead.
okay, I've never heard the term personhood. So if you can you please explain to me like the definition of it?
Yeah, so that makes a lot of sense. So personhood to me is the existence of consciousness or sentience, right? So without consciousness or sentience, we don't really ascribe value to that thing. Uh, so I think it's necessary to have that added component to life. Life is necessary but not sufficient, sort of thing, right? You have to add consciousness in order to ascribe human rights to something, right?
That's a very interesting take.
So,
Um,
well, I'll give you the problem I have with the argument of life being the determining factor when it comes to the pro-abortion versus anti-abortion debate. Life can be ascribed to a fetus based on the biological factors that you've laid out. The problem is that for well, a couple of things, and I think you really kind of already hit on it, right? Life can be is somewhat arbitrary, right? Life can be ascribed to many things, like including, like you said, like an egg, right? Is living. A
yeah.
sperm, right? Is living, right? But do we ascribe value to those things?
Okay, I see.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, I see. Um,
So,
do you
and
want me to say where I describe the value difference, or
yeah,
has it
yeah,
been
jump in,
okay?
absolutely.
Yeah, okay. So when it comes down to the value of life, um, so when I first debated this, I point out that bacteria, um, you know,
Right.
it's these categories as well. And someone brought up in my first debate, well, whenever we step on the ground, we kill millions, if not billions, of bacteria. So how can you defend life of an unborn child of a fetus when you can't defend the life of something else? And that's where value, I guess, kind of comes in, because obviously we're going to value our future generation, our the future children of this world more than a bacteria or anything else walking around on the ground. Like a pig. I've heard people have given me this argument about a pig. And when it's born, it has the IQ of a toddler, and it maintains that IQ of a toddler, but we still kill it for food. It's because just because it has the IQ of a born child, uh, the value of it is not compensated by that. So when it comes down for like value going further back and like it's say like development between like the egg or the um fetus. Yeah, I had a brain fart right there. Yeah, a fetus. That's where it gets iffy for me, because I was just told and presented the evidence that the egg is alive. Um, so I guess where I
But
can kind of.
sorry to jump in.
No, no, you're
Go
fine.
ahead.
You're fine.
Go ahead and finish your thought, and I'll jump in.
So, so for the sake of argument, currently, I'll say I'm going to, there's going to be more value fetus over the egg, because if the egg is not fertilized and it's fulfills its lifespan, it dies, and then the body I think it's called like the menstrual cycle, like the the period, it is then disposed of, because you can't have anything decaying in the female reproductive system. So that's the body's natural way of cleaning it out. So I'm going to apply more value of life to fetus than I would the egg.
So you value the future potential of consciousness.
Well, the future potential of anything, because the kid could discover the solution to slowing down or maybe altering the course of climate change for the better. Would be a great leader, a great friend, teacher. It's past consciousness. It's the fetus, as it develops into a fully grown unborn child, which is then born, and development obviously continues. Um, the early in life, the amount of things that we could do for the best and for the worst are limitly endless. Endless possibilities.
Sure. So here's my problem with that argument. When
Mhm.
you value the future potential of consciousness, or even the future potential of anything, right? Like you said, this embryo or fetus, kind of whichever point in development we're talking about at any given time, has the potential to become the next president of the United States, has the potential to cure cancer for the world. But you're also subjecting that embryo, fetus, unborn child to limitless possibilities of horror, right? I mean,
Yeah.
so you have to look at both sides of that, and that leads
Mhm.
into like the neonatalism argument, or excuse me, antinatalism argument, right? Where
It's
if
that.
basically if you value the future potential of the unborn child, because you're possibly subjecting it to a chance of a horrible outcome, morally speaking, I guess, that it's actually immoral to become pregnant, period, right? Because you're possibly subjecting that child to a life not worth living.
Um, I've never heard of that take before. What I would say to that is, it comes down to
To be clear, that's not
life
my stance. That's just
eh, okay. Yes, but for the sake of it, I'll briefly just go over it. Um, life is full of good things and bad things, but leads us to whatever person we eventually do become, whichever path we choose in life, is determined by who we socialize with, how our parents have raised us. Has there been any, good and bad life experiences? The neighborhood you grow up in. All those are factors that could lead you to be a good person or could lead you to be a bad person. So I'd say that does not make getting pregnant morally wrong, because those are circumstances outside of pregnancy.
so. What about things like childhood cancer, right? That you can't control, but you could be subjecting your unborn child to something horrible outside of your control, outside of the environment, right? That that's what I mean by valuing future potential rather than past and present potential, right? I think that is really where we value personhood. And we go back to the word personhood, which again, in my opinion, is sentience and consciousness. So without past and present sentience and consciousness, why should we value that something? Why should we value something that doesn't exist yet over the rights of something that does exist, that currently and has held those human rights, right?
Okay.
Yeah, jump in.
Okay, so um, you mentioned the word existence, and something non-existing over something that is someone that is existing. So can you please explain the reasoning behind that? Because the fetus is there. The fetus is developing human life. I believe. Correct me if I'm wrong. I believe we've established that.
It's developing human life, right?
Yes, it's developing human life. It's a developing person, and it is there. It does exist. So what do you mean by existing and non-existing?
Because it doesn't have a state of sentience. It doesn't have a conscious. Or it is not conscious, right? And it has never been conscious, right? So that's what I mean by existing, right? I think we value the consciousness over the development, right? Because there are endless states or points of development, right, throughout a human life, including the after what we consider death, like after brain death, the body does still develop, right? But at that point, we don't value that life anymore as an existing life with human rights, right? At that point, they're dead. All right, even though their body may still be developing. So we value the end of life as the end of consciousness. So why wouldn't we value the beginning of life with the beginning of consciousness and sentience instead of the beginning of development? Right. So that's basically my whole argument. You start with I don't understand why you would start with a point in development and then end in the point of consciousness.
I wouldn't say I end at the point of like the ending of consciousness, because someone could be, the brain dead but their heart still beating. The person is still a living human. Is in this unfortunate circumstance, they can't really do anything. They're on life support. Basically, the person is in a state of, I guess you can say, before they're born, because the lifeline that they're on, the machines and everything that's keeping them alive, making sure that nothing else shuts down or anything, to keep the heart beating, is basically kind of like the mother's womb. And
Well,
the person's unconscious, just like the unborn are unconscious as well.
to be clear, I mean more like the literal death of the brain. Like we as
Oh, okay.
just in general, like we would call them dead, right? Or you can even think of it as the other, either your brain dead or your heart is dead, right? Like one of the two means you're dead, right? Like you're I guess your heart could still be beating, but your brain is dead, or your heart stops and your brain maybe goes on living for whatever they say, like up to an hour or something like that, right? But in both circumstances, we consider them dead, and so we no longer value that life as a life, in terms of like ascribing rights to that person, like ascribing human rights to that person. You know what I mean? Not that we don't value them, like we don't value their past life, but they have no future. They have no potential for future consciousness at that point either. Right?
Yeah, I mean, I am Christian. I believe in the afterlife, but even then, so person's dead, but the person has lived a life. A fetus,
right.
that person's life is just beginning. They may have not have developed consciousness. They may not have. I believe the time they have consciousness is. Let me take my notes here. I think it's the last trimester, maybe.
Well, I actually
9 weeks.
have.
Think, yeah, 9 weeks. They have some level of consciousness because they react to loud noises. The source for psychologically today says the unborn can hear, react to noises. They're in, it's called rapid eye movement, REM, which is they call it the sleep of dreams. And it can pick up tastes of food that the mother digests. Um,
So
so it can distinguish the voice between the mother and a stranger.
one of my problems with the kind of some of the well, let me actually address your point here first.
Mhm.
I actually have a study from nature.com. It's called The Emergence of Human Consciousness from Fetal to Neonatal Life.
Okay.
And it's a really interesting study. It's super hard to understand. Like there's basically this study uses what they call the global neuronal workspace model, or GNW model, or what they call it a theater of mind, metaphorically. Right, and
Okay.
I'm gonna like super paraphrase because it's like there are words that I just can't pronounce in here. So
Welcome to science.
yeah, it's way over my head. At least the words are, but I understand
Mhm.
the concept of it. Essentially, this model is a measurable model based on connections between certain parts of the brain, which are the words that I cannot pronounce. So I'm not going to even try. But essentially,
Thank you.
it's the measure of those connections, and
Mhm.
it measures consciousness essentially. So it's really interesting. But just the I'll read the conclusion, and it's interesting. Essentially, well, I'll just read the conclusion and then I'll paraphrase. So, a first
Okay.
conclusion on this ongoing research is that the fetus in utero is almost continually asleep and unconscious, partially due to endogenous sedation. In particular, it would not consciously experience nociceptive inputs as pain. Conversely, the newborn infant exhibits, in addition to sensory awareness, especially to painful stimuli, the ability to differentiate between self and non-self touch, sense that their bodies are separate from the world, to express emotions, and to show signs of shared feelings. Moreover, objective signs for the mobilization of the GNW circuits are being detected in awake infants at the level of prefrontal cortex, in sensory processing, in responses to novelty and to speech, and in social interaction. Yet its capacities for internal manipulations in working memory are reduced. It is unreflective, present-oriented, and makes little reference to concept of him or herself. Newborn infants display characteristics of what may be referred to as basic or minimal consciousness. They will still have to undergo considerable maturation to reach the level of adult consciousness, obviously, right? And then it goes on to say, preterm infants and neonatal infants and their level of consciousness. Basically, there's a spectrum of consciousness, but consciousness really doesn't start until birth, right? Until and there are actual. I'll give you like the criteria that they use to describe consciousness, so it's not just so arbitrary. Um,
Mhm.
so in the GNW, multimodal perceptions, emotions, and feelings of the present, evoked memories of the past, together with anticipations of the future, become subjectively integrated in a continuously changing and dynamic flow of consciousness. That's very essentially what they describe as consciousness. So having those evaluative systems, long-term memory, perceptual systems, motor systems, and attentional systems all contribute to the global workspace of consciousness. Now, a lot of this is over my head, but
Same here.
but that is that. So this study essentially says that there is a spectrum of consciousness. But real consciousness doesn't actually start until birth, where you can differentiate the outside world, things like that I've already previously stated. So
Mhm.
so essentially, this is a really nice study to be able to understand consciousness at a really high level. Um,
Yeah.
but um,
Like, I think that's past college. I think that's like career type level.
oh yeah. No, this is. I mean,
Yeah.
yeah. This is a study from. Well, Nature.com published it. Pediatric Research is the actual
Yeah.
publisher of the or author, excuse me,
Yeah.
of the
Yeah.
study.
Fun fact. I also used nature.com.
Oh, I think I
I
noticed that.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, I used it for the metabolism part. My
Yeah,
argument.
they like repost a bunch of really good published articles.
Yeah. Mm. Yeah, so would it be fair to say that you value life that is conscious?
I think you have to. Yeah. Yeah, I do. And I don't think that well, no, I take that back. Life is different than personhood. I think personhood can be described as consciousness. Life, I don't think matters as much. Life can be so small that we don't necessarily value it as such. You wouldn't you wouldn't ascribe human rights to a clump of cells in in a womb, not yet developed, because it doesn't exist yet, right? Consciousness is really when what we value as a society.
I think this is where we're going to be like mostly I think maybe I wouldn't say gridlocked, but I'd say this is where we kind of like collide because without life, without your living organism, without your living cells, um without everything that develops you into a person that gives you said consciousness, that gives you the personhood, without that you're basically dead. So saying that we should value life at the point of personhood, to me doesn't really seem to make. Maybe you can elaborate more, but to me it doesn't make sense because without the life, there's no personhood.
Well, let me be
Personhood
clear.
dies with life.
I think that in terms of abortion, we value consciousness, right? In terms of policy, there are a lot of points of development, right, within, even in utero development, right? We can point to things like implantation, fertilization, conception, all the way up to birth, right? We have these measurable points in the development. One of those points that is the development of consciousness. The problem is the best point we know where to put that, because consciousness is something other people will never be able to perceive, right? No one can perceive your consciousness, right? So it's
Okay.
impossible to really know exactly when it's developed, but it does exist there somewhere. So the closest point we can put on that is birth, right? Is the actual birth of a human, is where we ascribe those human rights. So after birth, an abortion is just murder, right? And I think
Yeah,
that's
abortion is
where the
murder.
line is. Well, I after birth, right? So right, so that's where I think the line is. I think that's the most obviously, I guess it goes without saying, but I think that's the most logical place to put it.
um. Okay, so you're all right with late term. The
I don't think that situation exists.
I mean, it is a minority of
I
abortions,
mean,
but I was
it's
just
got to be a
wondering.
vast minority. Women wouldn't
Mhm.
carry a pregnancy to 8 months and then decide, you know what, I just don't want this baby anymore. Right? They've already like
Yeah.
that's it's a like maybe I'm wrong. I haven't seen contradictory evidence to that, but
Same
I
here.
don't think that situation exists at all. So morally, my cutoff, I mean, and it's really arbitrary, like it's just my feeling. Morally, my feeling would be up to the third trimester. Abortion would be okay, and I think at that point, because there's viability outside of the womb, you should see that to term. But as a policy, to birth makes the most sense, because like I said, late term abortion really doesn't exist outside of emergency situations.
Yeah, yeah. I'm gonna bring up, like there's medical. So what what I say is consciousness comes and goes. Like you can be knocked out and be unconscious as well. But your living self, you keep on living, and then you're able to regain your consciousness as well. So
But
I believe
that's
going off of consciousness is kind of like gray area. And you also mentioned how it's abortion is specifically the area where you would prescribe personhood as a way to um, be pro-abortion, correct?
well, I mean, I'm just talking like that's I'm saying all this in the context of abortion. Um,
Okay.
but I believe personhood in general would start at birth. Um, because that's where we ascribe human rights to that person, right? They get a social security number and all that stuff.
Gotta get that money.
Right.
Yeah.
So so that's where I was from. Now, I do want to address your consciousness fallacy, I guess you can say, right? Where people go in and out of consciousness, right?
Yeah.
You can go under general anesthesia and you're unconscious.
Mhm.
So I guess the question would be, should we not value that life because they're technically unconscious, right?
No, because the person's still living.
Right. I agree with you. And
Okay.
but I agree with you because we value past consciousness and the potential for future consciousness, right? So if that person was brain dead completely, there's no chance of them actually coming back to life, right? Then at that point, we don't really value that life as much. KK, I'll address your question in just a or KJ, I'll address your question in just a second.
Mhm.
But but it's not sufficient, right? We also have to have past and present consciousness, right?
All right. So you mentioned something interesting. I don't want to take it out of context, but I think it's something that I believe should be mentioned. You talk about future consciousness as being a factor, correct?
Necessary but not sufficient. Yeah.
Okay, so if it's necessary, an unborn child does have that. I know I'm kind of taking
Sure.
different situation and applying it to a completely different category here,
No, I
but
mean it's
I
analogous.
find that interesting, and I find that interesting.
It's analogous. It's necessary but
Mm.
not sufficient, right? I believe
So
that to be sufficient, you also have to have present or past consciousness.
okay, so you say the person has already had consciousness, has already like how would you like if the person like has ever like opened their eyes open once and they're conscious and then they go back to unconscious? Do you count that as consciousness or is it just a little blip?
In what situation? Like, what do you mean?
Just generally speaking, I mean it's kind of like this is a rare case. I'm trying, like I don't even know if this even happens, but like the person is unconscious, person comes back, becomes conscious, it goes back unconscious.
Is
Generally speaking.
but they were alive already, right? They
Yes,
were
alive.
they
Yes,
they
yes.
existed already, and if there is potential for future consciousness, then Yeah, we would value that life still.
Okay, so um, an unborn child, once when it develops its eyes, does have the ability to blink. There has been shown that although primarily they do sleep like 99.9% of the time, there is they do briefly, quickly open their eyes and they shut them back. So isn't that evidence of consciousness because they're awake for a very brief moment and then they're back to being unconscious.
No, I mean they wouldn't really perceive anything as a fetus, right? One part of this article or this study that I mentioned that's relevant here. The fetus may be aware of the body, for example, by perceiving pain. It reacts to touch, smell, and sound, and shows facial expressions responding to external stimuli, right? As you mentioned, right? However, these reactions are probably pre-programmed and have a subcortical non-conscious origin. Furthermore, the fetus is almost continuously asleep and unconscious, partially due to endogenous sedation, right? So those with those with that said, the fetus really isn't what we would consider conscious, right? Because those types of reactions are more primal, I guess, for lack of a better term.
Mm-hmm. All right. So you said you wanted to address someone in the comments because someone has commented in my stream as well.
Yeah, we'll do that. I'll do that later. If you want to address the person in your stream, you can go ahead.
All right. So Jamie 314. I'm not gonna say the rest of the numbers. Jamie says my issue at that point, and I don't know whose point. Jamie, if you're still watching, please let us know. About the fact that I can't possibly have ever got to where I am or have existed without the bit that you claim I didn't have sentence. So it's still muttered, and then someone mentioned something about my live stream thing. So I don't know what that person's saying. Do you have any idea?
I'm not sure which point exactly
Me neither.
they were addressing.
Jamie, if you're still watching, please elaborate. I address
Yeah.
your person or all right.
Oh yeah, sure. So KJ says it's okay to kill a fetus in late-term abortion. Oh wow, even pro-choicers wouldn't feel comfortable defending their position. And no, I mean, so that's not what I said necessarily. I just don't think that that's really a thing, right? I don't think people are carrying babies 7 months and then just because they feel like it, they're aborting their pregnancies. It doesn't really happen. Number one. Number two, my personal feeling is that I think after a fetus is viable outside of the womb, it's not really moral to kill it because it has physical, viability outside of the womb. But that's just my personal thing. In terms of policy, I think that the best we can do to ascribe consciousness to a fetus, or I should say, an unborn child, is actually at birth. That's the best we can do scientifically to do that. So, as a policy matter, maybe if I were to create the policy, right, I can kind of create a quick policy, right? So, abortion is legal to up to birth, with exceptions after the second trimester. That abortion is only legal in emergency situations. Right, that would be like my ideal policy.
Okay. My ideal policy, it may seem contradictory to me, but medical things happen, and there have been unfortunate things happen medically, and there have been times where there's doctors have been left with no choice. They've been sworn an oath to preserve life, and so when it comes down to person to which life they're going to want to help preserve, whether that be like the unborn or the mother. I believe that should be a mother and father discussion and a mother father decision. Because then like whose life are you willing to save?
Okay, interesting.
Um,
Interesting.
yeah, I know it sounds like a logical except that like it's if it sounds contradictory, because I want to preserve all life, the mother's life and the unborn's life, but I understand that there's are these slim um areas where that's virtually, with our current technology and current medical practices, that is currently impossible to do um without going outside of um legal um official methods of medicine.
I think that you're kind of running into um, a conundrum with with your uh, with your argument, right? Because
Yeah.
yeah, and I think that that's a reason why my argument holds up so well is because a consciousness, if we bookend the protection of human rights, I guess we can call it that, right? If we bookend the protection of human rights between the
Mhm.
beginning of consciousness and the end of consciousness, we don't worry about like the development of the life. We don't really value the development of life anyway, right? We really value the person as a person, right? So if we bookend those 2 points with consciousness and sentience, it makes a lot more sense than starting with the beginning of development of life, right? Where the argument is we're valuing that development of life over the existence, the already existence of a human life in the woman or the person who is carrying the unborn child, whether no matter what phase of development it's in.
Mhm. Yeah, so I think the reason why in that specific narrow situation your argument holds up a little bit more on paper is because technology hasn't progressed far enough for that. I believe give it a few more years and um we will be able to um prevent having these life changing decision for the parents. Um, you know, Technology is always progressing. Science is always progressing. So I believe we'll eventually get to the point um, where those situations pop up. We'll have the medical scientific know-how to preserve both lives.
So even in like early term pregnancy, right? Early like first term pregnancy, you would say that that life, if a mother, if the person carrying the unborn child decides that they got pregnant in like let's say first term, no matter the circumstance, could have been a positive circumstance, could have been a really negative circumstance, we don't know, but that mother decide or the person who's carrying that child decides that they don't want a baby, you would say we have to save that developing fetus, um, with all of the technology at our disposal when is if it's the mother's decision that they don't want the child.
Yeah, because it has it when it comes down to a fetus, its end result is human. It has current human DNA as a result of both a mother and a father. Um, so naturally speaking, it is human. It's just it's developing, it's growing. Because when we leave the womb, we don't stay as tiny little um
So
babies. We develop into toddlers, we develop into teenagers, we get to the point of old men, and then our body starts to shut down, then we die.
just as a
Um
thought
so
oh sorry, keep going. I thought you were done. Go ahead.
yeah, so So development has will always continue even to the point where kind of our body kind of gets too old for it and it gives out. Um, and obviously, you and I disagree on what point do we consider it human. I consider it human beginning because it has the genetic code of the human race.
Well, to be clear, that I think that where we disagree is where we ascribe human rights, not necessarily like being a human. I agree that
Okay.
a developing human is of the human species, right? That's not our
Okay.
disagreement. Our disagreement is where do we ascribe basic human rights?
Okay, so like First
Like
Amendment and everything. Kind of.
no, we like the right to life, right? Like the
Like to
actual
life.
right to life. I guess we
Yeah,
could say.
I
I don't love that phrasing, but for lack of a better term.
yeah, I understand. Yeah, I'd apply the right to life from um the moment it's fertilized and developing. The
Right. Yeah, I
natural
understand that's your argument.
production of the human has already occurred and is well on its way. So naturally speaking, if we're going to apply rights, the right to life should apply to person no matter the stage that they're in.
So, as a thought experiment,
Okay.
I'm curious if I can just ask you a question.
Yeah.
So let's say in 50 years we have the technology to save an embryo, fetus, really any unborn human developing life from the point of conception on. Right, we have that
Okay.
technology. Right,
Yeah.
at that point, would you then would you then, let's say mother is, or the person who's carrying that unborn child is it no longer wants that child, right? Would you then say that we can use that technology to save that child as well as free the carrier of that child from the burden of that unborn child?
And it's actually
I phrased that terribly, but I
yeah,
hope
I
you
know.
understand what I
Yeah.
mean.
Yeah, so like when we have the technology, um I'm gonna word this terribly too. So basically, so we have the technology so that will enable us to save an unborn at any stage
Yeah.
of development and able
Basically,
to transplant it out of the mother into like an artificial womb or something,
something like that. Sure.
Yeah, an artificial womb. That way the mother can walk out without having to carry an unwanted child. At the same time, the child gets to continue living and develop and eventually experience the rest of life.
You got it. You got it. That's it.
Yeah.
That's the question.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's actually that's normally where I try to go in these discussions because that's the for me that's the most ideal situation because that way the mother's not forced to carry one a child and at the same time the child still gets to live. The child's not murdered. It's still given a chance at life.
It's a loaded word, murdered, but so okay.
Within context of abortion.
So at that point,
Mhm.
who takes care of the child?
That's a great question. What I would say that is that I understand realistically the government is broken. We can't even have the government adoption. Like I think it's called the foster care system. It's underfunded, and if we have this, either we're going to have to pull money out of the military or whatever because it's going to be really high tech equipment. So there's a public foster care system. There's also a private foster care system as well that performs a lot better in terms of not losing the kid and endless paperwork. and everything else. It also doesn't strip the private option doesn't strip the parents the parental rights of the biological mother and father. So, say the mother wants to have a kid, but also doesn't want to carry a kid, can do this as well and not lose their rights to the child. So I'd say once when we have the technology, we'll be able to have private organization, obviously under intense government oversight to make sure nothing suspicious goes on within these private organizations, but at the same time, still able to operate efficiently enough to ensure that all the unborn children they're taken care of survives the process and everything else.
So your solution for the care the care of a then born child would be just foster care?
It's I draw a parallel to foster care because that's the closest thing we have to this scenario. Obviously, when we get the technology to do this, setup's going to be a lot more different. But for simplicity's sake, I draw a parallel to the existing forms of foster care. So we'll have a public option and also a private option as well. Obviously, when we get the technology, who knows what system's gonna? It could be its completely own thing. It could be set up similarly to foster care. It could not. Something that we'll have to wait and see because who knows when we'll be able to have this type of technology.
So your solution would be to put the burden on the state.
It honestly depends. I mean, I read this article and I've also seen statistics. Want for abortion has gone down nationwide. Obviously, like states like California and small communities within states where the want for has gone down. They're still there and they want it. But the general census is that people more willing to donate and even pay taxes to the existing foster care system that is horribly underfunded. The talk about the public option, the government ran option. So with this, I guess you can say a precedent set. We'll be able, state shouldn't be so burdened because both sides will be happy with paying extra taxes to ensure that one, the mother doesn't have to carry on unwanted child, and two, life is still being preserved.
Who wait?
It was kind of like I see it being more bipartisan.
Who would be happy paying extra taxes for that?
Typically, like so. Right, you got a fair point. Not everyone would like seeing an increase in taxes. So maybe like have like an optional tax people can willingly sign up for to help provide extra funding for it. There's a lot of different avenues that the government hasn't tried, even to fix our own current foster care
That's just
system.
charity. That's just charity at that point, right?
A charity, but instead of going to a private one, it goes straight to the government one.
Ooh, so you would. I feel like we're falling into a slippery slope right now because
It is a slippery slope because honestly, we had to fund it and take care of it on the scale needed to even maybe operate one of these pieces of technology. Who knows the monster's cost? There could be just a limited number of them, and too expensive to operate more. We're in pure speculation now. Now we're on a really slippery slope because this is a realm where we honestly won't know till it happens.
Well, and that's kind of my point, right? So one and this I'm hardly the first person to make this argument is that one argument of the pro abortion argument is that if a lot of conservative or right leaning folks say value the life up to the point of birth, right? And then we see things like Republicans and conservatives voting for the abolishment of social welfare programs, right? That would help
Hmm.
children, especially poor children, right?
Yeah.
So that's kind of my point. Is that when if we want to save every single what we call life, even in the development of life, um,
Mhm.
you know, I just feel like that is a super super slippery slope that
Yeah.
is really tough to justify, in my opinion.
Yeah. Especially when Republican Party, generally speaking, like striking down those organizations that's supposed to help out with children, with foster children, and everything. They're like, oh, charities will do it. Well, if
Charities
you look
won't do
statistically,
shit,
well, it'll help. Like anything helps, but it's not going to help enough.
but it doesn't guarantee the what's the right word for this? It doesn't guarantee the optimized outcome for no, that's not the right word either. It doesn't guarantee anything, right? Frankly, right? It's a charity, so they choose to help who they want to help, whereas um, government actually helps everybody in a particular circumstance, and we set the threshold for those circumstances and who qualifies for what circumstance and where, right? um, so like the government actually offers a guarantee, whereas charity it doesn't guarantee anything. It's just it's a nice gesture, but that's all it is.
Yeah, and that's why I would like to see more cooperation between charities in the state. I like um if charities and the government worked closer together, the government can provide the guarantee that the charities offer, and the charities can plug gaps in the current government system, like how the private foster care organizations currently do. Um, it could be beneficial to everyone if they worked more closely together. Then the question is, the typical counterpoint I receive is, oh, it's government taking over. No, it's charities willing to work with the government and vice versa.
But you can't really expect anything from private organizations, right? I mean, it's you can't say they would willingly do it, because they very well may not. But I think we're getting into more like just general politics at this point.
Yeah, now we're just getting to the divided government and divided society that America finds itself in currently.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
That's a sad thing. The lack of cooperation between the right and the left really, like, I don't know.
Well, I mean,
This makes me feel um I wouldn't say mad, but at the same time, I'm also kind of mad. They both promise a better world, and yet they're not willing to work together.
because the values are vastly different, in my opinion. It's just it's real hard um, to work with people who have just uh, uh, opposing values at their core. It's tough. It's tough. Politics is hard. Politics is stupid. Um,
Well, I would agree. I agree with you. It's difficult, but I'm going to my local university, and I am majoring in political science. I want to
as you
help.
should.
I want to be one of those people
Yes.
that gets both sides working together. I will I'm willing to make the sacrifice of getting gray hair and stressful nights. If it means that we're going to get something actually meaningfully done.
Oh, I agree with that. I think we need something actually meaningfully done, but I think that the left needs to do it by crushing the Republicans. I think that's that's how
Okay.
we're gonna get things done.
Um, I'd say more just cooperation because I understand majority is a majority and minority is a minority, but I like it when both sides are heard and both sides work together. It shows unity rather than divisiveness. Um, and I guess I know we're kind of off topic here, but having both sides work, I think would drastically depolarize the nation that we are in, the state the nation's in currently. Because now everyone the majority of people on the right are like, Democrats are coming for us. They want to destroy this country. And the people on the left are like, if you supported Trump, you're a fascist white supremacist. And that's just like, come on, like these are outliers. Like these are people who are like the minority of the minority of the supporters of both candidates. Yeah, we're just gonna focus on that and tear the country apart. I just don't see the point.
Well, I mean, to be honest with you, I mean, I disagree with. Well, first of all, I don't believe that the Republican Party really has any values necessarily. In fact, I don't think there's been a coherent policy from the Republican.
It hasn't been
Party,
coherent.
For a very long time. So to work with people like that and to find a middle ground, I don't think there's a middle ground. I think that I'm right and they're wrong, frankly.
I believe if you look at the individual politician, you'll find middle ground. The problem with the Republican Party is now it's strangling itself over. We continue the path of Trump, or do we go back to being traditional conservatives? They're in a realignment period, and it's the outcome of the realignment period. I think is going to be a determining factor of who's going to control politics for the foreseeable future. There's a growing radical side to it. There's a shrinking moderate side to it. So it's going to be interesting to see if the moderates can bounce back or if the radicals, like that Taylor Greene person harasses AOC all day, people like her, will they take over, or will people in the middle of the conservatives, will they be able to take back the party?
Yeah. The right wing is a mess, man. It's a mess right now.
At least with the left, you guys have more unity between the moderates. I mean, compared to the Republicans. I know I know. AOC, I remember that little schism AOC and Nancy Pelosi briefly had. I think it was back in I believe it was back in 2018. I remember that little schism.
Well, it's progressives and leftists are not well received in the neoliberal left right now.
So maybe we'll see the Democrats eventually get to the state that Republicans are doing. Quite frankly, I believe it comes down from government. It have more parties involved, more than just Republicans and Democrats. Maybe Libertarians and the Greens, the Democratic Socialists of America, like have more of a multi party thing. So then that way the socialists can have their party and the QAnons can have their party, and then we'll have the two moderates. And the moderates can keep,
I'm way more in favor for a multi-party system than a two-party system, of course.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, I don't even need any, barometer or for it. You have as many parties as you want. I think it makes way more sense.
Yeah. Let's turn into like Europe. You'll have 8 parties in the House and Senate. And
absolutely, let's do it.
Yeah,
let's do it.
Coalitions are more willing to work with each other than we currently have here. So,
absolutely. Well, listen, Aiden, we are way off the rails here.
Yes, we are.
we just took a roller coaster of a ride to where we are right now.
Yeah.
So and to be perfectly honest with you, I really, really have to pee. So why don't we do this? Let's do some closing thoughts on the subject here.
Oh yeah.
All right,
Man.
and then
Mhm.
you know, if you want, we can chat a little bit afterwards too. But I have to pee so bad that
Yeah, we can do a closing statement. We can talk later.
yeah. All right, sounds good. So yeah, give me your closing thoughts. Anything you know of note about the discussion and where you're landing.
All right, so I'd say one, thank you for being civil and having a civil conversation with me.
Oh,
I'm
same to
really
you.
glad there's still people left in the world that we can have a civil conversation with, even though we vastly disagree. Um, what I've learned from this discussion is going to have to do more research in like the consciousness side of the argument, because I've never heard your perspective before. So and thank you for bringing up a different perspective. You know, I'm always willing to research and look into things more. Um, but just to see, you know, where I still stand, like, you know, um, you made some valid points. Um, and I'm willing to look into those a lot more. And man, just thank you for having a great discussion, man.
Yeah, man. Same to you. Appreciate it. Appreciate it very much. Yeah, I think at the end of the day, you know, our disagreement comes from whether we ascribe human rights to. Well, okay. I guess I was going to straw man, but um, our disagreement at the end of the day is where we put the value of personhood, right? And I don't know that we're ever going to be able to uh, come to an agreement on that. You know, and that's okay to a point. You know, I think that you know with when we're talking about policy, you know, we really have to consider the rights of everybody involved, especially when it comes to abortion. I just don't think that it's you know, and to kind of sum up my point, I don't think it's fair to ascribe human rights to. Oh, Elaine, yes, he does. This is Political Talks. You can follow him on Twitch at Political Talks. Um, and so, anyway, I don't think it's fair to ascribe human rights, especially the ones that supersede the human rights of the carrier of an unborn child. You know, I think that to really sum up our entire discussion and my side of it, that would be it. Um, and I would ascribe those human rights upon birth when we know that uh, unborn child is now a born child and for sure exhibits consciousness. Um, so that would be the end of my argument. But yeah, man, hey, thank you so much for hopping on with me today and discussing this.
Yeah, man.
I think we got to a point where we were just gridlocked and we started rambling with each other. So
Hey, I kind of like that because even when we got off the rails, we still had productive discussion. You know.
agreed. Yeah.
Yeah.
Uh, all right, man. Very good. Let's do this. I'm going to take a quick break, and if you want to hang out, we can talk about other stuff too.
Oh yeah, man. Yeah, sure.
All
Yeah.
right. Cool.
Mhm.
All right. So let me do this real quick, and then if you want to just mute yourself uh,
Discord. Yeah.
on the Discord, I'm going to
Mhm.
disconnect for a moment, and I'll be right back.
All right, man.
All right, thanks, Aiden. And for everybody watching, again, this is we've been talking with Political Talks. Actually, let's before I go on a break, I totally should have done this. Give us your plugs. Oh, Aiden, you still there? Oh, he already muted himself.
Yeah, yeah,
Sorry.
yeah, yeah. I'm here. I'm here. I'm here.
Sorry,
Um,
I should have done this before we got to the break
plugs.
part. Yeah, give me some
Oh,
plugs. Where can we find you?
links. Yeah, yeah. Actually, I have a site for that. I'll drop down in your Discord. In a second. My bad.
Perfect. Yeah, I'll put it in chat too.
Yeah, I
But
have a
yeah,
links page.
right on. Yeah, and for
Yeah.
everybody watching, this is Political Talks. You can find them on political_talks on Twitch, right? And you're streaming right now
Yes.
too, right?
Yes. Yeah, I'm also streaming.
Perfect. Perfect. All right. Well, with that said, yeah, if you want to post your link in the Discord, I will get it in chat right after break.
All right, perfect, man.
All right. Thanks, Aiden.